As the investigation into ancient Egypt deepens, our attention turns to the tools themselves. The marks left on stone tell stories that written records often miss. Inside temples and sarcophagi, you'll find granite surfaces with cuts so smooth and consistent they look like they were made by modern machines. Yet, these creations predate the use of iron tools by thousands of years. Microscopic analysis reveals spiral striations and precision drilling that suggest rotational speeds very difficult to achieve with hand-powered methods. We're not saying they had power tools, but it forces us to ask, did lost mechanical techniques, materials, or methods once exist, only to be simplified or forgotten as knowledge faded over generations? The mystery only intensifies when we consider how they moved these massive stones. Many of Egypt's greatest monuments used materials quarried hundreds of kilometers away. Huge granite blocks from Aswan somehow made their way to Giza and Saqqara, traveling across deserts and rivers with barely a scratch. Archaeologists have tried to replicate this with sleds, ropes, and a lot of manpower. But when you scale these models up, you run into logistical nightmares that are rarely addressed. It suggests that Egypt possessed sophisticated project management, surveying, and workforce organization that could rival modern systems. In this context, technology might not just mean machines, but a perfect blend of applied knowledge, mathematics, and social engineering. Then there's their mastery of water. Egypt perfected hydraulic engineering in a land of seasonal extremes. Their canals, basins, and flood controls required precise timing and measurement, aligning their entire agricultural system with the stars. Some scholars even propose that water was used in construction, perhaps to level foundations or move heavy stones using buoyancy. As we look at these ancient waterways, now dry and buried, we realize that environmental mastery was central to their technology. When the climate shifted, these systems failed, and the techniques that were once essential for survival and building monuments began to disappear. Forbidden or rarely discussed texts hint at specialized knowledge passed down through priestly schools, carefully guarded and encoded. The House of Life was a real institution that acted as both an archive and a laboratory, blending religion with science. Astronomy, medicine, and engineering weren't separate disciplines like they are today. They were all intertwined. As we move through temple corridors carved with symbolic diagrams, it seems this abstraction may have protected their knowledge during unstable times. When power shifted, the technical instructions faded, but the rituals survived. Belief continued, but capability quietly diminished over centuries. So, the focus shifts from what Egypt built to what it lost. This advanced knowledge probably didn't disappear overnight. It likely eroded gradually as conditions and priorities changed. Our confusion arises not because the ancient Egyptians were impossibly advanced, but because we underestimate the complexity of societies that weren't industrialized. Egypt's achievements challenge our assumption that technology only moves forward. They remind us that knowledge can be fragile and easily lost when the systems that sustain it collapse. For centuries, we've looked to dynastic Egypt as a cradle of civilization, a place where monumental technology seemingly sprang from nothing. But what if the story starts much earlier, in a world that has since vanished? Geologists have confirmed a startling truth. Thousands of years ago, the Sahara was a green, vibrant landscape, filled with rivers, lakes, and thriving societies. But then, disaster struck. A rapid climate collapse turned this paradise into the desert we know today, forcing its people to flee. Where did they go? They converged on the last remaining lifeline, the Nile River. Imagine these displaced cultures, carrying with them generations of accumulated knowledge, all funneling into this one narrow, fertile corridor. It's possible that Egypt didn't invent its incredible technology in a vacuum, but rather it became a crucible, a place where the wisdom of an entire region was concentrated, refined, and preserved. This idea echoes in ancient myths from around the world, stories of a golden age of wisdom lost to a great flood or cataclysmic drought, after which survivors rebuilt civilization. Even Egyptian texts speak of a primeval time, Zep Tepi, a sacred era ruled by gods who brought knowledge to humanity. For a long time, we dismissed this as mere mythology. But when you place these stories alongside paleoclimate data showing the Sahara's collapse, they suddenly seem less like myth and more like memory. The genius of Egyptian technology wasn't just in building big, but in building smart. Their temple alignments, their understanding of astronomy, and their precise orientation all point to a deep awareness of their environment. This wasn't just for ritual, it was for survival. By integrating the cycles of the Nile, the stars, and the Earth itself into their architecture, they created predictive models designed to endure long-term environmental change. This suggests they were thinking in terms of geological time, not just human generations, perspective perhaps born from inherited experience with societal collapse. So why does this advanced knowledge still feel so mysterious? Modern archaeology often works in fragments. We excavate a single temple or a tomb, but we miss the larger system it was part of. We see incredible monuments, but not the vanished infrastructure or the lost settlements of the cultures that preceded them. The technology seems miraculous because we're only seeing the endpoint disconnected from its origins. Perhaps the greatest puzzle isn't how this knowledge existed, but why it faded. Egypt may not be the beginning of a story, but the final, brilliant chapter of a much older one, a legacy of survival. A final expression of ancient wisdom preserved in stone against the relentless march of time. Ever wondered how the ancient Egyptians built such massive, precise structures without modern tools? The secret might be simpler and smarter than you think. It's not just about stone and muscle, it's about measurement. These weren't just simple rulers, they were subdivided with incredible mathematical precision. This level of standardization tells us something huge. There must have been a centralized system, like a National Bureau of Standards, that trained and audited specialists. Technology here wasn't just a tool. It was a way of thinking, a culture of precision that governed everything from construction to labor. They describe diagnostics, surgical procedures, and even pharmacology with specific dosages and expected outcomes. This wasn't guesswork. It was a system of controlled experimentation passed down through generations, where health, environment, and even spirituality were all connected. Advanced technology doesn't always have to glow or spin. Sometimes it's a protocol, a methodology that preserves life and knowledge efficiently. Of course, you can't talk about ancient tech without someone mentioning electricity. While reliefs of lotus columns and jade pillars are usually seen as symbolic, their consistent patterns hint at a conceptual understanding of energy and flow. Instead of jumping to sensational conclusions, let's look at the material science pigments with unusual conductivity and clever lighting methods used in deep, dark tombs. The absence of an obvious power plant doesn't mean they were in the dark. It just means their technological language was different from ours, and we need a bit of humility when trying to translate it. So, where did all this knowledge go? Power and politics played a huge role. Temples were also state institutions that controlled information. When a new dynasty took over, the curriculum changed. Techniques that were useful to the new rulers survived. Others faded away. On some temple walls, you can see where old inscriptions were plastered over and written on top of it. Knowledge wasn't always erased, just suppressed or redirected. By making certain methods sacred or secret, the elite could control them. But over time, secrecy leads to loss. Today, we're using lasers, scanners, and computer simulations to test these ancient feats. And while we can confirm that many of their achievements were possible, there are still gaps in our understanding. This confusion is actually a good thing. It forces us to rethink what advanced really means. Maybe ancient Egypt's greatest technology wasn't a physical device, but a highly sophisticated social, institutional, and environmental system of knowledge. A system so complex that when it fell apart, its remnants would seem like miracles to us today. Our story now turns to the texts that survived on the margins, writings translated and copied, but rarely emphasized by mainstream Egyptology. The pyramid texts and coffin texts describe transformation and ascent with language that blends spirituality with instruction. It's as if technical processes were encoded symbolically to protect them through unstable times. When literal explanations risked misuse or suppression, metaphor offered camouflage. Complex ideas about matter and energy could endure, disguised as theology. Greek philosophers who studied in Egypt, like Plato, spoke of priests who possessed records stretching back thousands of years. These accounts imply structured archives and verification methods, suggesting knowledge was not static, but curated, tested, and transmitted. As later cultures inherited fragments without context, the technical frameworks dissolved, leaving behind awe and confusion. What was once understood as process became myth. Ancient Egyptian cosmology also reflects precise observation of celestial mechanics. Star clocks and solar paths governed both ritual and construction. This integrated system suggests a civilization synchronizing itself with planetary cycles for practical ends. But as the skies slowly shifted over millennia, interpretations drifted. What once functioned as predictive technology became symbolic tradition, confusing later observers who saw myth where there had been method. Modern politics also influences how we interpret the past. Egypt's heritage is tied to national identity and tourism, so challenging orthodox timelines can be disruptive. The narration of history is often curated for cohesion and economy. Advanced technology is acknowledged, but it's framed as exceptional rather than systemic. This preserves the wonder without demanding a complete revision of history. Suppression isn't overt, it's achieved through emphasis and omission, shaping public understanding within comfortable limits. Egypt's technological mysteries seem to arise from a loss in translation across time, culture, and intent. What was practical became sacred. What was systemic became isolated. Understanding this requires interdisciplinary patience, blending archaeology, linguistics, and engineering. Egypt's achievements challenge our own modern certainty, reminding us that knowledge can survive collapse, but only by changing its form. Today, modern archaeology uses non-invasive technology, letting us see beneath stone without disturbing it. Muon scans inside the pyramids have exposed hidden voids and corridors, their deliberate geometry suggesting intentional design, not random collapse. We are seeing patterns of spaces placed with intention, hinting at architectural knowledge far beyond what surviving records show. Laser scanning reveals tool marks with extraordinary consistency across distant sites, implying standardized training, not just individual skill. When these scans are layered chronologically, we see continuity where disruption was expected. This suggests that the loss of technology wasn't a sudden collapse, but a gradual interruption. The incredible stonework we see might be the final generation of mastery, preserving the results long after the methods faded. Environmental and political shifts also played a role. As the Nile's patterns stabilized, the urgency for large-scale engineering faded. Skills tied to specific conditions became obsolete. Power dynamics changed to new dynasties favored visible symbols like monuments over invisible processes like technical manuals. As priesthoods guarded knowledge, specialization made entire systems fragile. When a few key roles vanished, entire techniques followed. Modern experiments trying to recreate ancient feats have had some success, but they also expose how much we still don't know. Egypt's advanced technology likely wasn't a single lost device or secret method. It was a convergence of environment, organization, and discipline, a system effective enough to create masterpieces, yet fragile enough to vanish quietly, leaving precision without explanation and achievement without instruction. So as we move deeper into this story, the question isn't just asterisk, ancient Egypt achieved such sophistication. The real mystery is why our modern world struggles to fully accept it. Think about it. Our academic frameworks were built during an era that believed in a straight line of progress. Ancient cultures were always placed firmly below our industrial capabilities. So, when evidence pops up that messes with this neat little timeline, it's often treated with extreme caution. This isn't usually coming from a bad place, but from a need to protect the established intellectual order. We see this in lecture halls and conferences, where debates are carefully measured and certain boundaries are just understood. The way we see the world, our paradigm, literally shapes what we're able to perceive. When a piece of evidence threatens the very foundation of accepted history, it gets filtered, reframed, or isolated until it's no longer a threat. Politics plays a role too. Egypt's story is tied to national identity, tourism, and how its heritage is managed on a global scale. A narrative that balances mystery with limitation keeps the wonder alive without stirring up controversy. It's a stable, safe approach. This is why institutions tend to reward continuity over radical new ideas. Proposing a complete reinterpretation of history brings uncertainty, it risks funding, and it can confuse the public. As a result, evidence of advanced technology is acknowledged, but only selectively. It's framed as moments of exceptional, almost miraculous, ingenuity rather than proof of a systematic, widespread knowledge base. This neatly contains the implications, allowing us to admire their achievements without letting it unsettle our entire understanding of the past. There's also a social pressure at play. Researchers who propose unconventional ideas, even with strong evidence, can find themselves ridiculed or pushed to the margins of serious academic discussion. Reputation acts as a powerful gatekeeper. This environment encourages caution, not curiosity, and it narrows the field of exploration. Over time, certain questions just stop being asked, not because they've been answered, but because they've become too inconvenient. Ironically, our own modern technology makes this tension even greater. High-resolution scans, chemical analysis, and complex simulations are generating anomalies faster than our old frameworks can absorb them. Science is a messy process. Our tools often outpace our ability to interpret what they find. When explanations lag behind, the uncertainty grows, and the natural response from institutions is to delay drawing any firm conclusions. This leaves ancient Egypt in a strange limbo, revealed in stunning new detail by technology, yet still constrained by tradition. But maybe this confusion isn't a failure. Maybe it's an opportunity. The monuments themselves stand indifferent to our debates. Perhaps their true lesson is one of humility. They remind us that our knowledge is shaped by our own culture and our own expectations. What if the thing that confuses us isn't the ingenuity of the ancients, but the rigidity of our own modern mindset? If we allow the past to be complex and inconvenient, Egypt stops being an unsolved riddle. Instead, it becomes a profound lesson in how we remember, how we forget, and how we negotiate truth when it challenges. As our journey reaches its final movement, the monuments of Egypt stand unchanged. They watch generations question them, never exhausting their meaning. We move through shadowed corridors and sunlit plateaus, feeling their endurance rather than just seeing their spectacle. The confusion we feel isn't failure, it's evidence of depth. Simple explanations collapse under the weight of what remains. Egypt's advanced technology persists, not as a solved equation, but as a reminder that human capability is shaped by context, necessity, and loss. What we see today isn't the full system, but its fossilized surface price mute and waiting. In this light, ancient technology becomes less about impossible machines and more about vanished frameworks. Knowledge once lived in people, in their training, environment, and continuity. All of that can disappear without leaving tools behind. We see empty quarries and unfinished blocks, symbols of interruption, not just mystery. Modern science struggles not because Egypt was inexplicable, but because it expects permanence. When civilizations collapse or stabilize, they shed skills like skin, retaining outcomes while forgetting the methods. Precision survives in stone, while understanding dissolves into ritual, story, and reverence over centuries of gradual transformation. This brings us to the present, because the same forces that shaped loss are still active today. Climate change, political upheaval, and institutional fragility threaten modern knowledge systems, despite our digital abundance. Ancient ruins and modern data centers are both vulnerable in their own ways. Information without transmission is as fragile as memory without context. Egypt's enduring confusion warns us that sophistication does not guarantee continuity. What endures is what is valued, practiced, and renewed. When urgency fades, even the greatest achievements can become incomprehensible relics to those who inherit them. Silence becomes the final motif, the space between explanation and wonder. The wind moves across stone, untouched by centuries of debate. Some truths resist closure, not because they are hidden, but because they exceed the frameworks we apply to them. Egypt doesn't demand belief in lost marvels, only respect for complexity. Its technology challenges the arrogance of certainty, inviting patience instead of conclusion. By accepting confusion, we allow history to breathe. We acknowledge that understanding unfolds unevenly, and that humility might be the most advanced tool we possess. As night falls, stars reappear above the Nile, just as they did for those who built with a foresight we still measure but do not fully grasp. The greatest loss is not ancient technology, but the assumption that progress only moves forward. Egypt proves that knowledge can rise, crystallize, and vanish without warning, leaving perfection without explanation. Somewhere between stone and silence lies a lesson still unfolding, asking whether future civilizations will understand us any better, or if our own achievements will one day confuse those who walk among their remains. When we dig deeper into Egypt's past, we find something astonishing. The mystery isn't just about Egypt anymore. Similar feats of precision stonework, incredible astronomical alignments, and advanced surveying techniques pop up all over the ancient world in cultures that supposedly never met. It's like finding the same unique fingerprint in a dozen different locked rooms. Could it be that Egypt wasn't an isolated genius, but a key hub in a global network of ancient knowledge? This network might have fractured over time as climates changed and societies broke apart, leaving behind only echoes of a once shared wisdom. The advanced technology we see in Egypt wouldn't be a sudden invention, but a surviving piece of a much larger, older puzzle. This idea is woven into the myths of countless cultures. Legends from across the globe describe culture bringers, wise teachers who arrived after a great catastrophe. They taught humanity how to build cities, farm the land, and live by law before mysteriously disappearing. In Egypt, they were revered as gods. Elsewhere, they had different names, but their story was the same. These weren't literal gods, perhaps, but a preserved memory of real engineers and teachers. Their instructions turned into myths to ensure the knowledge was never forgotten. So where did this knowledge come from? One possibility is a lost civilization. Think about the end of the last ice age. Catastrophic climate events and rising sea levels completely reshaped the world's coastlines. Entire land masses, possibly home to advanced societies, were swallowed by the ocean. Survivors would have been scattered, carrying fragments of their knowledge with them as they migrated and merged with other groups. What we see as a sudden explosion of civilization along the Nile might actually be the arrival of these displaced people, compressing generations of experience into a new home. This challenges our neat historical timelines, which is why it's a controversial idea. It requires archaeologists, geologists, and mythologists to work together, breaking down the walls between their fields. The monuments of Egypt might not be the beginning of the story, but the middle. They are a testament to knowledge preserved under extreme pressure, a civilization that held on to extraordinary skills just long enough to carve them into stone for eternity. What confuses us isn't the technology itself, but the fact that we're looking at the ghost of a world far older and far more connected than we ever dared to imagine. Thanks for watching, and if you want to explore more mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe.